Naps are both good and bad, depending on the situation. Naps can be a double-edged sword. We had participants assigned to one of two groups. They all learned a whole list of new facts. One group took a 90-minute sleep opportunity. The other just remained awake, and the difference between those two groups was about 20%. Almost all areas of cognition that we've looked at and many areas of your emotional and mood health we've looked at seem to benefit by way of a nap. So then what's the problem? We and others have done lots of studies on naps, and the benefits are fascinating and stunning. I'll tell you about one study we did. We had participants assigned to one of two groups, and at midday, they all learned a whole list of new facts. So it was a study about learning and memory. And then one group took a 90-minute sleep opportunity, sort of focused right around that drop in alertness. The other just remained awake, lying on a bed, and they just watched a nature documentary. And then 5 hours later, we had them do another learning session. And so they've woken up after the 90-minute nap. They've got through that sort of initial lull that we'll discuss what that is after you wake up. Everyone's now back to operating temperature. So in other words, I've had you try to cram in a whole list of facts at midday and then a whole list of facts, new facts, again at 5 p.m. And I can ask, what is the learning capacity of your brain at midday and at 5 p.m.? And sure enough, what happened in the group that did not nap, their learning capacity gradually declined across the day. The nap group, they were able to sustain their learning and in fact, if anything, improve it. And the difference between those two groups at 5 p.m. was about 20%. So that's certainly non-trivial in terms of if you to say, here's a new compound that can boost your learning capacity by 20%, would you take it? I suspect it would probably make some money. So that's a demonstration of full learning and memory. We did another study very much like that in terms of its design, but we looked at your emotional brain. We were showing people different types of emotional expressions and having them rate them. And we did that firstly before a nap and then after a nap versus that same time in sort of midday versus 5 p.m. And another group did not nap. And sure enough, the group that did not nap, by about 5 p.m., they were starting to rate fearful faces and angry faces as much more fearful and much more angry. But if you looked at the group that napped, it was different. They actually lessened the response to fear, and they blunted the normal increase in anger sensitivity across the day. And the nap seemed to boost how positively you rated happy faces. What was also interesting in those two studies, two different types of sleep were transacting those benefits. In the nap group that was doing the learning benefit that they got wasn't just about them napping and sleeping. It was about them having these sleep spindles. The more of those sleep spindles that you had, the greater the restoration of your learning capacity when you wake up. For the emotional recalibration that I described in the nap, that had nothing to do with sleep spindles or even non-REM sleep. It required REM sleep to produce that benefit. So there are certainly many benefits, and we've looked downstairs in the body, blood pressure, cardiovascular measures, immune health. They all seem to benefit. So at that point, everyone may be thinking, of course, this sounds good. Not to mention the basics, which is your attention, your concentration, your focus, and your energy all improve by way of naps. Even your decision-making is improved. So your capacity to make the correct decisional outcomes based on this weight of evidence that you're facing, that's also improved. So almost all areas of cognition that we've looked at and many areas of your emotional and mood health we've looked at seem to benefit by way of a nap. At that point, you're thinking, so then what's the problem? The problem is that when you nap, you release some of that sleep pressure that's been building up. We spoke about a chemical called adenosine, and the longer that you're awake, the more adenosine that builds up. The more adenosine that builds up, the sleepier you will feel. And after about 16 hours of being awake, you should have lots of healthy sleepiness of adenosine in your brain to put you asleep and keep you asleep. And when we sleep, we are able to clear that adenosine from the brain. So we wake up after 7 to 9 hours. And if it's been good quality sleep, we're refreshed because we've cleansed the brain in part of that adenosine. When you take a nap, you just release some of that healthy sleepiness that you've been building up. So the dark side of napping is if you are struggling with sleep and you suffer from insomnia, the advice is do not nap during the day because you're setting yourself up for an even higher probability of failure at night. Why? Because when you nap, you release some of that good sleepiness that we need to build up for you as someone who is struggling with sleep to give you the greatest chance of a weight of sleepiness on your shoulders. So if you are not struggling with sleep and you can nap regularly, I would say naps are just fine. The only caveat is make sure that you're not napping too late into the day. And this is one of the components of the protocol of how to nap. Because napping late in the day is too close to sleep. And you can think of it almost like snacking before your main meal. A nap late in the day just takes the appetite edge off your sleepiness so that when it comes time for sleep, you're not as hungry anymore. How to optimally nap. The word optimal is interesting because when people say, how long should I nap? What's the optimal nap duration? The question I have back to them is, what are you trying to optimize? Because once I understand what you're trying to optimize, I can give you a better prescription, non-medical I'm talking about here, a better sort of, protocol piece of advice for how to nap. Let's come back to then assuming optimal is for most people when they speak about naps. I just want the quick reboot. I want my alertness and concentration, which are failing because I'm staring at the screen or I just can't concentrate on the work that I'm doing. I want that sort of slight boost in brain energy where I know I can sustain myself for now a longer period of time. To get those basic things, which is what most people nap for, aim for a 20-minute nap. Why 20 minutes? If I thin slice the nap duration, and those studies have been done where we look at essentially what's called a dose response curve. I give you 5 minutes of a nap, 10 minutes of a nap, 15 minutes, 20 minutes, 30 minutes, 45 minutes, 90 minutes. After 5 or 10 minutes, you don't really get very much. Once you get past about 15 to 17 minutes, now things start to look different. You get these nice benefits for concentration, alertness, and motivation, and those things sustain. So once you wake up out of that, probably really, I would say 20-minute nap, at that point, you've got some good wind in your concentration and energy sales for the brain, and that will sustain you throughout the rest of the afternoon and into the evening. The benefit of the 20-minute nap is that you don't get something called sleep inertia. If you go out into sleep, light stage 1 non-REM, then stage 2 non-REM, and just before you get into the very deeper stages of non-REM, 3 and 4, that starts to happen around 30 to 40 minutes for most people. But by cutting your nap off at 20 minutes, you still get these nice benefits from a good chunk of healthy non-REM sleep, but you're not going so far into the cycle, so deep into your non-REM that when you wake up after 20 minutes, you are not in that what we call sleep inertia phase, that sleep grogginess, that sleep hangover phase. So it's a nice benefit that you get all of these improvements in your brain, but you wake up and very quickly you're back up to operating temperature and you don't suffer that inertia. Now, that's not to say that when you sleep or you nap longer, you don't start to get more benefits. You do. And those benefits are both greater in their magnitude and sustain for a longer period of time. They do. It's just that you have to understand the trade-off that you will suffer, which is I will get more bang for my buck and I will get more benefits. But I will, in the first sort of hour or so, have to understand that at that point, I may even be functioning worse than that which I did before I even started napping. So aim for about 20 minutes. That's the dose. The timing comes back to that which we described before. Do not nap too late into the day. So what's the rule of thumb here for a protocol? On average, for the average adult, I would say don't nap after about 3 p.m. 20-minute naps sometime between 3 p.m. And if you're struggling with sleep, don't do this at all. If you're not, and you're able to get to sleep fine, this seems to be a good ingredient for the basic return on your investment.